Shalom, good afternoon, good evening, good afternoon from my end of the world. And we are not only are we live, but we are international. And I'm always so humbled from the internet to take me around the world each week. And this week we are in Melbourne, Australia. And as I say, I am one blessed human being to be sitting in the studio with Max McQueen, who I love your name, Max. I got to put up your name. Wait a minute. I know I'm a little bit of like a groupie. Okay, here's your name. Yeah, I'm like one of your fans, Max. Here's your name, Max McQueen, and I am even more impressed and more proud and more humbled to be talking to you, and your career's a full-time firefighter. And this is just not a typical, high-tech career. This is brave and courageous. And for people to choose to be firemen and policemen, and, it really is a special personality. And I want you to know that. And I want you to hear that over and over again, that you are a special person. So my name is Dr. Tovah Goldfine. I tend to forget to introduce myself. I'm here each week on the TMS Roundtable Recovery, talking about truth, talking about healing, helping and inspiring people that they can heal everything from A to Z. And we're here today. I found you, Max. I kind of am a scout. I find you people on the internet or Instagram. And if you've healed, I want to speak to you, and I want to educate others and inspire people the possibility of the healing. So I found you on the Central Sensitization Syndrome Facebook page, where I'm an expert advisor. I just talked to some of the people there, and you wrote specifically about your healing, and I was like, I messaged you and said, would you like to be on my broadcast? And you were like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. And then that was about a month ago, and here you are. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be quiet and just basically sit back. And what I like our listeners to hear is pretty much a timeline. Like you grew up, you had this childhood, you went to college, you got married, you didn't, you got a job, like a little bit of a timeline of what happened, how you began to get your symptoms, and then really how you dove into the self-healing methods, the neuroplastic methods, and how you healed, and that helped. It's possible for all of us to heal. So
Mhm.
welcome, and thank you again for being here with me in your evening. It's 8 o'clock
That's right.
Melbourne time, and thank you so much, Max.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Tova, for having me. Yeah, I'm
Uh-huh.
really grateful for this opportunity. And yeah, as you said, we met on the Facebook group, and I was at a place in my journey, I suppose, where I felt like it's time where I want to get my story out there and see if I can pay it forward and maybe help some other people. So this is a fantastic platform
Beautiful.
and yeah, really good opportunity for me. So thanks for having me.
I love
Um,
it. I love paying it forward. That's amazing. Okay.
yeah, and yeah, I live in Melbourne. I was born here. And yeah, my story when it comes to chronic pain started in about 2017. But before that, after I finished school, I studied for a couple of years in fire technology, and then I joined the military as an aviation firefighter in the Royal Australian Air Force. So that was in 2012. I was 21, and my goal was to, yeah, be a firefighter, like come hell or high water. I just, from the age of about 17, I knew
Unbelievable.
that's what I wanted to do.
Unbelievable.
And it's a very competitive industry where I live. So yeah, I had to kind of build my resume to make sure I was, going to be a decent
Wow.
applicant for the job. And
Wow.
they love people who've been in the military because, you've been exposed to arduous conditions. You're good at doing what you're told. You're good at having a routine, teamwork. It all comes together, and similar skills sort of cross over to firefighting. So yeah, it was a perfect pathway for me. That being said, when I was in the military, whilst I was really good at doing what I was told, I found I'd sort of had all that drummed into me so much that I couldn't switch it off. And I felt as though coming out of the military that, yeah, I just couldn't slow my body or my mind down. And I knew it wasn't healthy. Um, but for a time there were sort of no major repercussions. I had a lot of trouble sleeping, but that was about it. So I guess I developed an anxiety disorder from my time in the military, and that manifested as problems with sleep mostly. But after I got out, I got my dream job in the fire brigade in Melbourne. And so I've worked there for the past 8.5 years, which has been amazing. But come 2017, so I've been in the job for about 2 years or so, 18 months, end of 2017. I donated blood, which I used to do regularly and never had any issues. But this time, after I donated blood, I felt really sick. I basically lost my energy. I felt really off. I had what I would describe as a brain fog. So usually I'm pretty sharp, but I just constantly felt almost tipsy. Like I just could not concentrate, and my mind was fuzzy all the time. And so I was still working, but I was trying to investigate what was going on. And I spoke to doctors, and they found out that I'd depleted my ferritin stores. So I had low iron. And it was pretty simple at the time. They just said, take some supplements, look at your diet, and it should resolve within a couple of months. And so I followed the advice, was able to get my iron back up to a normal level, but the brain fog really persisted, and it was really frustrating, especially in my job, because I mean, any job, I guess, would be frustrating, but I'm trying to drive a fire truck and my mind doesn't feel sharp.
Of course.
But I was, because I didn't quite know what was going on. It's like, well, I'm fairly new in this role. I don't feel like I can just take extended time off. I don't have that much sick leave up my sleeve. How long is it going to take to figure this out? As many of your viewers know, like it can be months and months in between getting specialist appointments to try and get some answers.
You were taking the iron supplements, but you weren't back to your normal self.
Exactly. Yeah. So I resolved what on paper seemed like the issue, but the symptoms continued. And so about 6 months into that, I started having some pain in my right elbow. And I'd actually had a previous injury there, tennis elbow, my right arm that I'd had from the military. And it cropped back up at a bit of an unusual time. Like I hadn't been doing anything different, just my normal gym. And so I sort of managed that injury in isolation and, saw a physiotherapist. And then about 2 weeks later, I hurt my knee while running. And once again, that was a bit strange, but I just treated that in isolation as well, just thinking, something's not right, but, it's an injury. You do what you're supposed to, and you get advice, and you see the right people, and you do exercises, and it should get better. And it didn't really get better, either of those. In fact, they got a lot worse. And then it would have been another couple of months later, I developed the same tendon injury that I had in my right arm, but in my left. Wow. And then a couple of months later, I have sort of mirrored injuries all over my body. Well, that's certainly what it felt like. And I was still working. I was still just toughing it out. But to be honest, inside, I was terrified because I didn't know what was going on.
Of course.
And I realized, I didn't have a plan B as such. Everything from the age of 17 was about just getting this job in the fire brigade. But, it's very contingent on your body being right to do the job. And because I was so junior.
You must have felt really, I imagine you felt embarrassed, like you couldn't show up in the way that you had been showing up. There was this sort of like, what's wrong with me, questioning. I mean, this is what goes on. And so continue, because I can't imagine what you were going through.
Yeah, and I mean, I just had to internalize all that because I was basically just holding my breath, being like, all right, on my days off, I'll do more work, I'll put more time into my body, I'll figure this out, and I've just got to tough it out for my shifts each week, which I was able to manage relatively well, but it didn't feel great, especially in a new job where you just want to, you want to impress and you want to feel at the top of your game.
So you continue to work with all these symptoms, with like the blood, the iron, you continue to work.
I did. Yep, throughout that whole time. And that persisted for sort of 18 months, I would say. So it was, probably close to the start of 2020. The pain got so bad, and it just spread everywhere. It started spreading to my fingers, like all my joints were sore.
Wow.
My jaw was sore. I couldn't stand up for too long. Like the pressure on my feet was just too intense. And I was like, that's it. Like I can't be at work anymore, you know? So I had to make that tough call to tell the boss, look, I got something going on. I don't know what it is, but I'm going
Oh
to need
my
some time
God.
off.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, which was a pretty horrible place to get to. But yeah, I just knew I wasn't sort of safe to be at work anymore, essentially, and wasn't up to the task. And I was able to see a rheumatologist, and this was going into the pandemic, so appointments were getting harder and harder to meet. But yeah, I saw a rheumatologist, and I walked into that appointment thinking he's just going to tell me it's stress, you know. Um, oh, sorry, I should go back because, as I said, I was treating each of these what I thought were injuries in isolation, and so I saw a knee surgeon for the knee issue, and he was looking at my scans and he said, look, yeah, I can see some degeneration here. You've got this minor meniscus tear, but he's like, it doesn't correlate with your symptoms, you know, like
Yeah.
I would not want to
Yeah.
do surgery on you. And so that was a bit of a strange thing for me, and sort of maybe picked something up in my brain that thought, oh, I don't think I'm on the right path here, just
Yeah.
trying to treat these injuries
Yeah.
as they are, as
Wow.
they feel. But yeah, I walked into this appointment with the rheumatologist thinking he's going to tell me I'm stressed, I'm just doing too much, and I just need to have a few months off work, settle down, and things will go back to normal. And yeah, that was quite naive of me in hindsight. But yeah, he told me that I had something called central sensitization, and I thought, gosh, this is horrific because he's telling me I've got something I've never heard of before, which can never be good.
Right. Right.
I have no idea, you know, if it's possible to heal from it. And he said, look, most people will improve, but, you know, he didn't say black and white, you will get better.
Yeah.
He just said, most people will improve. There are some things we can do to help.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was kind of the start of the exploration and education and what led to my healing journey, I would say.
So if in essence that label was a turning point for you. For some people, it can really lay heavy. Oh my God, this is fatal. This is terrible. I'm out. Or it could be, okay, I have a label. I have something I can do with this. And let me Google the SHIT out of it and let me figure out, because ultimately when you went in that office, it was stress related. And that's what you found out months later. So you were on the right path. It doesn't mean stress. I mean, it was nervous system related, you know.
Yes,
So go
exactly.
ahead.
It was
Yeah.
something that, you know, rest wasn't going to fix.
Right.
But it was frustrating because I felt like it would have been easier to deal with something if, you know, say my arm had just been chopped off. And it's like, all right, got no arm now. Guess I need to find another job. But for this, it was sort of this like, some people get better, some people
Right.
don't. You know, it's
Very
something that
vague.
you
Very
can
vague.
learn about. And yeah, so it was. I was just sort of like holding my breath once again, just being like, hopefully I can figure this out. Things aren't looking great because things have been getting worse, not better. But here we go. And at the time, I couldn't find a whole lot of information about central sensitization online. I remember there was one YouTube video by the Mayo Clinic that sort of explained what was going on in the brain, which was helpful. But I was lucky enough to find a support group on Facebook, and the woman running the page actually lived in Melbourne, where I live, which was awesome. And so I reached out to her, and she put me on to her physiotherapist. And he was a neurological physiotherapist who I saw within a couple of months, and he was really pivotal in explaining what was happening in my brain. And he gave me a book that sort of got my education started around what's going on and why what's going on makes sense. I actually drew a little picture, and it's very rudimentary, but this is what he drew me to sort of explain what was happening. But essentially, if you think of these as the nociceptors that are the nerves in the periphery that are basically sending messages from sensors in the muscles, and they're sending them to the central nervous system. So he's saying, you know, we have sensors all over our body in all our muscles, and they're constantly reporting on things like the temperature, so whether the temperature is too high or too low, mechanical pressure, and things like chemicals, so pH and that sort of thing. And he said, this system's working great. Like, you know, if I was standing up for a while, you know, it'd be sending information saying like, yep, there's a bit of pressure there in your foot, but it's manageable, you know, just normal stuff. But then when it's being received on the other side, in the central nervous system, it was basically being received at like 10 times volume. So it's saying like, hey, that temperature is way too high, or that pressure is way too much, or those chemicals are all out of whack.
Like the dials turned up and stuck at number 10.
Exactly. That's exactly what he said. And basically saying that the problem here is in the central nervous system and in the brain's understanding, or how it's hearing those signals from the periphery. And pain is its mechanism to stop you from doing those activities, because it's getting all these messages and thinking like, danger, danger, danger. I need to give you pain to stop you doing what you're doing. And so that's why it was always associated with movement for me anyway. So yeah, the more I moved my body or did exercise, the worse the pain would get.
But you understood that your pain was protecting, like your brain was protecting you. And then now you had an opportunity to understand why.
Yes, but it was, you know, even though the diagram is simple and that idea made so much sense to me, it was like, okay, now I know that there's no damage in the tissue. My brain's just sort of being a bit too sensitive and a bit more on guard than it should be. Now I have that information. Why hasn't it settled down again, you know?
Good point. Good question.
But he said, you know, that's where neuroplasticity comes into it. And essentially what's happened is I've reinforced those signals over and over and over again, because every time I was at work in pain, still working, you know, I was creating this relationship between movement and fear in my brain. And my brain got better and better and stronger at building these neural pathways that associate movement with danger.
Yeah. And just our listeners, I like to repeat this. And I'm sure that this brilliant physiotherapist was talking about that. This brain is a lizard brain. Its job is to protect. It's got no other job, and it doesn't care about anything else except to protect you and your body.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was at that moment he said, you know, well, we've got to undo what's been done essentially, and so we've got to teach it kind of from scratch how to move safely and teach it that movement is safe and it is good for us.
Wow. So is that what he did with you? He had you move in ways that were painful to teach the brain that it's safe?
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't a linear sort of progress that I made, but he essentially, he wanted to find a baseline, and he said, all right, well, what do you think you can manage now in terms of your exercise? And I said, well, I think I can walk, you know, 400 meters or so, which was like to the end of the street and back. And he's like, great, let's start there. And so, yeah, for, I think it was every other day for 2 weeks or so, I would just do that walk. And he said, all right, let's add 10%, you know, let's do another 40 meters and do that for another 2 weeks.
Amazing. So you were seeing him, and then he was giving you this homework to kind of,
and he was wonderful. Like during COVID, we weren't able to have a lot of in-person consultations, but he was great. Email. There were times where he'd give me his phone number, and I could just call and be like, "It's not working. Like, what do I do? What do I do?"
This is excellent. I'm really happy to hear about this, because there are many health professionals that understand the brain pain, and this guy was actually, you know, more what I think educated in that mind body understanding, safety threat, or, you know, brain generated and the irregulated, you know, nervous system, and how your brain was protecting you. So I love that you were educated and you fell into the right hands. So
yes,
did you see yourself? Look, this is an interesting question. Did you see yourself improving regarding the pain, or you just saw yourself just feeling more confident and trusting your body?
Very good question. So we're talking over the period of, 2 years, maybe 18 months before I started to see real progress. So the way it would kind of go was like, I'd do this for a month, and maybe I was able to get up to, 800 meters for after a couple of months or something. And then I would have a flare up where I had done too much. And it would set me back a month. Sometimes it would take another 4 weeks to get back to where I was. And the frustrating thing about that was it felt a bit arbitrary, what was causing the flare up or what ended up being too much. And it was really difficult in the beginning because my activity level was so low. It's like if I had to go to the supermarket, for example, and had to do another lap up and down the aisles because there was something that my partner had asked for that I'd forgotten, that would have put me over my step count, for example.
Wow.
And then that could have caused a flare. And I was tracking it with a pedometer, so I sort of was able to measure it, which was really pivotal for me because like being able to measure progress was really helpful because I could then see improvement over time.
Right, of course.
The other side to the coin, I suppose, was like, all right, that they called that graded exercise. That was one approach, but you had to sort of treat the emotional side of it as well. And so if you think of that exercise is putting a load on the nervous system, there are so many other things throughout our day that do put a load on the nervous system as well. So whether that was, stress I might have been feeling, with the living situation with COVID, like it wasn't easy on any of us, whether it was work, because I was essentially doing desk duties and work from home, which was good for me, but also, it was a load on the nervous system.
Of course.
And just your general mental state, how you slept, that sort of thing. So it was very difficult to pinpoint, okay, what's caused the flare up? And that was incredibly frustrating because I knew once a flare up had happened, what that meant for me. And it meant I had to start again, basically. And I'd say they were sort of the lowest moments of the experience.
So let's just speak to our listeners a little bit about the low moments because it has to do with your feelings. And so share with us. I mean, look, you're a sensitive man, and I always say that people that get, neuroplastic conditions, they're sensitive, strong people, and they have to learn to channel their character to serve them. So emotionally and psychologically, what were the feelings you were feeling? Because they were obviously triggering your amygdala to protect and go into fight or flight. Like, but what deep feelings were you feeling or not feeling?
Well, it was just incredibly upsetting because it felt like I'm just so far away from the life that I had. And each time I felt like that life, I guess, was slipping further and further away. And that was things like travel. My wife and I love to travel. And I mean, thankfully, because of COVID, no one could travel. So that kind of got me off the hook.
You felt better about that.
Yeah, I feel really guilty about that now.
So
but at the time, I was like, great, another lockdown. No one has to ask me why I can't come along on a trip or something like that. So that was actually useful for me. But yeah, I felt like, gosh, that's one of the things that me and my partner love doing, and not living up to the guy that she wanted to be with if I can't do those fun things in life anymore. Like that's what it felt like. And obviously
I'm just going to ask you, so the deep feelings, the core feelings that trigger the amygdala, excuse me, were, yes, you felt insecure, you felt like you weren't manly enough. So there, the deep feelings would be, fear that you're not enough, or anger at like, why me? Why is this happening to me? More that victim consciousness, which we talk about. And do you feel like you are a perfectionist? Do you feel like you're, like, talk a little bit more about, because they're the deep feelings that are part of the repression of and what created the brain to need to develop an entire label of CSS just for you, because you're that special. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Unfortunately.
How
It's
do you
interesting.
deal with that?
Well, I did read Healing Back Pain by John Sarno, and he talks about that common trait that seems to people who have that sort of inflicted upon them chronic pain. And it was, I think he calls it a goodism sort of trait, where you're a perfectionist, you're conscientious, you're a people pleaser. Yeah, which is definitely me. And so I think that certainly played a part. And also because my work and my career and what I loved was, it was all based around me being healthy and fit and using my body. It's like all those things, you know, travel, for example, as well. I love, you know, working in the yard and building things and woodworking. And it's like all those things need my body to be able to do those jobs. And so there's already like a higher threat level associated with protecting it just to begin with. So my brain, you know, was almost predisposed to protecting my body potentially, you know, more than the average person, because my livelihood, you know, is linked to my body.
Exactly.
You know, the task.
The interesting thing you had to come to terms with, this compassion and self-love and trust that your body couldn't do what you wanted, but that it did, and it will in the future. And you know, talk more about the feelings, and then share with the listeners about how you were able to come to terms with the reality in order to put your brain into parasympathetic nervous system and calm yourself. Like, because obviously you did that, but here you are now, pissed at yourself, angry. You're not enough. You're not doing what you want to do. Like, talk more about how you were able to come to terms with that and meet that, because you pretty much, this conscious mind has to meet the unconscious mind and somehow be friends.
Well, I had a lot of help. Like, I was seeing a psychologist and a psychiatrist at the time, because I felt like, as much as my partner is absolutely amazing and incredibly supportive, when it came to the issues that I was going through, like, I just realized pretty early on that she wasn't the one to help me through them, I suppose. And I couldn't constantly be putting the weight of my emotional state onto her. That wasn't sort of fruitful for us. So I had to kind of, take one step removed from that, as a bit of a self-preservation for us. But there was a lot of guilt, I suppose, because I felt like I'm not, I guess that she's not seeing me at my best. And, you know, of course, every partner's going to support each other throughout those hard times. But, you know, this was month after month after month after month of just me being, you know, I did my best to put on a brave face, and, you know, we still had lots of fun here and there, but it was like, you know, you're not living life as you want, and you just, it was like the color had just been drained out of my life, and I just, I couldn't be the person I wanted to be, I suppose. And I'm constantly thinking about.
I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second. 1 second. Hello. Is it from Hot? Okay, Dr. Dar, can you just speak to him? My phone's here, Dar. Can you speak to Hot? Okay, hold on. Yes, can you? Are you here to deliver? Is it? Yes, I do. No. 9 dolev. Not low, no ogaf. 9 dolev padesana. And אני אומרת. I said. I left ogaf. Pardesana. Please. Ken, תודה. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
It's a little bit of this, and I'm really sorry. So thank you. Did you just get triggered? Did I just trigger you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
What was I saying? Yeah, I guess I was sort of in this trap of just constantly extrapolating how I was feeling in that moment, and, you know, sort of failing to progress in my recovery to what does that mean the future looks like for us? You know, it means, okay, my partner's going to have to find someone else to travel with, and I'm going to have to find a different job, even though I don't want to do any other job.
Big decisions.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and it just felt like, okay, what sort of son am I going to be? Because, you know, I remember this time when I had pain and going up to help my parents in the yard, and I couldn't do much. And, you know, at the time, my 69-year-old father was doing more physical work than me. And that's a really low point, because I just felt like this isn't right. Like, I'm at that prime of my life age where I should just be able to, you know, carry the weight of other people on my back. And, you know, I know that thinking like that isn't helpful in hindsight, but that's just how I felt at the time. And so all that weight, I guess, was just added on top of, you know, feeling like a failure because I'm not being able to achieve what my physio said is possible. And my coping mechanism wasn't always great, but I actually found a bit of a formula for me in the end when I had a flare up. And I'm not a drinker. Like generally I would have one drink a month or something. Like I don't drink much at all. But if I had a flare up, I would just have a drink. I'd have a decent meal. I'd go have a cry in the shower, whatever it was that I needed to do. And the next morning I'd get up and I'd be like, all right, let's start again.
I think that's an amazing, you see, you know, we talk about journaling and meditation and mindfulness, and yet people have to discover what's going to calm their nervous system. And then they have to repeat it and repeat it. And if it doesn't work, then plan B, because it is about you were able to calm your nervous system and get back and like, okay, let's build that neural pathway. Let's build that neural circuit. Let's go ahead and wire and fire together, fire and wire together. So excellent.
Absolutely.
And it really is a personal thing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, that was one of the reasons why I did want to share my story, because I was also following, you know, a somewhat traditional path in this space of, you know, the things that do calm the nervous system down. Like I was, you know, trying to do deep breathing exercises. I was learning to meditate. I would do visualizations. I would do journaling. You name it. I was trying it, but those things, whilst I did have some good experiences, I never felt like I mastered them to any extent or that they had any lasting effects. But I found a few sort of hacks, I suppose, that did help. And one was like a hot shower. So heat was really good for me personally. I found that would reduce my pain for up to an hour. So it sort of became around like, why don't we leverage that, you know? Another thing was that post-exercise endorphins that you get. And when I say exercise, like my level of exercise at that time was really low, so it took a while to build this in. But there was a time where I was able to do some like Pilates type floor routines.
Amazing.
Nothing that got my heart rate up, but it was still some form of movement. And even though it was really uncomfortable doing it because I was in pain, afterwards I would notice that I would get, you know, it would buy me half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour of reduced pain.
Wow.
So, and then I found
here's a key. So to our listeners, that I know we think movement is the devil and don't move, but movement is such an important somatic mind body, telling the nervous system everything is okay. Movement is safe, slowly but surely. And this is what you're saying, that, you know, movement is the key, and to find the right physiotherapist, to find the right exercise, to get into the water, to walk a little bit. Like so many people on my broadcasts, you know, are excruciating pains that I had to go and walk with my sciatica. And I had to understand my sciatica wasn't dangerous. So this is what you're saying. My pain was there. My sensations were high at number 10, but they weren't dangerous. They were in my brain. And I can go ahead and bring safety and calm doing something that brings on this sensation in order to get rid of it. You know what Alan Gordon calls this? It's Max, the word is it's not I'm blanking, it's not counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. It's not, it's a paradox. It's not the typical you know, medical, go rest and take some Advil. It's counterintuitive. It's almost the opposite. So this is a different way of thinking, and it's so scientifically proved over and over again in our field. And yet it just seems so bizarre. So thank you for sharing that. So you go ahead. So you're doing a little bit of like blah Pilates, la, la, la.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a really good point you make because, the one pivotal book for me was called Explain Pain, and that's by Lorimer Moseley and David Butler, who are some South Australian researchers,
Yeah, it's
and they'd worked
amazing.
with my physiotherapist as well. And Lorimer Moseley says motion is lotion, and
Right.
so yeah,
I
that was
love
a
it.
really important piece of information to get into my head. Is that even though movement feels like the problem, it's actually the solution.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that
Beautiful.
was really pivotal.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But yeah, so I've figured out, all right, that buys me a bit of time with reduced pain. Some other things that helped were like a decent meal, that sort of literally activating that rest and digest mode after a decent meal. And I noticed that if I were to watch sport or an action movie or something, like my pain would be worse and I would literally feel a bit more jacked up. Whereas if I were to watch comedy, it would have the opposite effect. So it was like, all right, if I was having a rough day pain wise, it was like,
Yeah,
well,
I mean, let's go back to Norman Cousins, about, how he healed himself with laughter by watching Three Stooges movies because it created chemicals that actually brought down his SAD rate because he had developed ankylosing spondylitis. And he continued to inject himself with vitamin C and watch Three Stooges movies and healed himself. So this is something very important that you say.
yeah,
What about if you
absolutely.
were to watch a love story? What would that do?
Well, I love good rom-com, so that would be good as well. But yeah, anything feel good, really. Yeah, I think Schitt's Creek was on the menu at the time during COVID, so we watched all seasons
Yeah,
of that, which was really good.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, just laughter in general, and you know, being engaged in meaningful conversation, whether it was with colleagues or with friends or with my partner, yeah, that I know was really important because I realized there were plenty of times where you can't think of anything else other than your pain. And it's really frustrating because it's constantly trying to steal your attention away from, the person you're talking to. But then there were other times where it kind of snuck up on me and took me by surprise that I was so heavily engaged in meaningful conversation with someone I care about that the pain kind of took a back seat. And so
Wow.
that was
Very
really important.
important point about focus because this
Mm,
is a brain game. And so when we focus on it, it actually makes it worse. And so
mm,
but yet some of the neuroplastic methods are to kind of focus on it with a sense of safety. So this is a thin line that you were able to walk. Like I can notice it and observe it and recognize it, but it doesn't have to hurt me. That's a different kind of relationship. And this is what you're telling us. You built a healthy relationship with your symptoms.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't linear, and there were plenty of times where the opposite was true, and it felt like things were going heavily backwards. But when I was able to zoom out over the course of 12 months or whatever, even though I was still in quite a lot of pain, I would certainly been able to improve my functioning to the point where maybe I was walking, 2 kilometers a day, broken up into 2 walks or something like that. And so that was enough for me to not give up. And it was enough for me to say, well, I'm not ready to give up my job just yet. I'm going to keep at it. And I was lucky enough to have incredible support from my boss and colleagues at work who were able to sort of keep me motivated and say, just tell us what you need and
Very
we'll make it
important.
happen. And I was able to do some meaningful work away from the fire truck as well.
Yeah,
So I think that was
exactly.
helpful. I felt like I was earning my money again and sort of
Of
contributing, even though I
course.
was doing my normal role.
Right. Can
But
I
it
interrupt
was,
you? Can I interrupt you a little bit? And
please.
just, besides that, I mean, the neuroplastic, the walking with sensations, the awareness, watching funny movies. We had shared before the show, you had done some other things to maybe help your nervous system calm down. What other things did you do that maybe some of the listeners could relate to?
Oh, yeah. Do you mean the experience that I had?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like many of your listeners, I'm sure, like when you're down and desperate, if someone says to you, "Hey, have you tried this? This could help." You're like, "Sure, I'll try anything." I'd never tried drugs before, but I did get my hands on some mushrooms, and I had a psychedelic experience with psilocybin, and I I wasn't sure what to expect from it, but like I said, I was in no place to pass anything up. You know, I just thought, well, I'm desperate here. You know, maybe it will click something and I'll be able to see back into some sort of childhood trauma that a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists like to suggest that people have. And so, yeah, I had this experience, which it was enlightening in many respects, not so much in regards to the pain, but just a good reflection on, you know, my personality and why I am potentially the way I am. But essentially the trip just took me back through all these really negative experiences from my childhood. And like the earliest one was, you know, a time where I couldn't find my mum in a crowd, you know, and I was just, you know, feeling like I'd been abandoned or really scared that I'd lost her. You know, that experience of a child, which is, you know, quite traumatic in a sense.
Yes.
And then, you know, like a time that I was bullied in school, or a time, like the first time I was dumped by a girl, for example. So all these negative experiences, and I was able to kind of just reflect on the effect that they had on me. But it was also an interesting realization that the things that I was experiencing are just normal formative experiences that everyone experiences at one point. And it wasn't so much that there was something wrong with my childhood at all. Like I had an amazing childhood and wonderful parents and family. But it was just a realization that, you know, I was born as someone sensitive enough that those experiences might have had a longer lasting effect on me than perhaps some other people, which might have contributed to, you know, the anxiety disorder as well to some degree.
Yeah, well, you have a beautiful way of expressing and sharing it, and you know, showing the potential relevance of how you would grow up and feel abandoned. Now
Mm.
you're abandoned by your body, and we're not here to blame parents or point the finger. Everyone's responsible for, you know, no one's to blame. I like to say that. And
Mm.
Max, you were asked by your body to take kind of responsibility that you didn't expect. And I think what you're sharing with us is that you stood up to the task. You know, so here we are going over 2 years. So besides that experience, so you came out of that and you felt, and do you think it directly affected your pain? Do you think it directly affected your being able to calm your nervous system? So what happened after that? Like, how did that take you to the next level?
Well, so much of this experience, I suppose, was about reflecting on myself and looking inwards and learning more about myself. So I think it certainly played a part in that regard, which could only have had a positive benefit. It didn't necessarily feel like there was a direct correlation with my pain at the time. The most pivotal moment actually was it was July 2021, and essentially the last thing that Western medicine sort of had to offer, because I was still sort of, you know, I was trying medications, supplements, still seeing doctors saying, hey, we could refer you to these people. And I saw a pain specialist who sent me for a ketamine infusion in hospital. And it was literally what my rheumatologist said was like, this is the last thing we got for you, mate. Like, if this doesn't work, you know, you're kind of on your own. And so I was really hinging all my hopes on this working out. And unfortunately, it didn't go well at all. I had this pretty terrible experience where after about 24 hours of the infusion, I was supposed to be on it for a week. It felt like I'd been plugged into an electric socket, and it was so much pain that just came
Wow.
alive. Pain that I hadn't had, you know, in a severe manner for quite some time kind of came back all at once.
Wow.
And so I just pleaded my case to the doctor saying something's not right. Like, my pain is so much worse. It's so much worse. And he said, Max, you telling me your pain is worse from the ketamine would be like you telling me your pain is worse from having paracetamol or Tylenol. It's not possible. I was like, all right.
Wow.
And look, I said, I don't know what to do, because I just knew, you know, this is my last shot of something hopefully really making a big difference. And I really wanted to continue, but my body was telling me this stuff wasn't right for me. And I said, you know, would it be possible to give me something for the anxiety and maybe that will calm me down enough to get through the infusion? And he said, look, I'm not here to treat your mental health. And he said, do you want to continue or not? And so I was forced to say, no, let's take the drip out. It's obviously not for me, which was a real rock bottom for me, because it was the first time I'd been treated like that by a doctor, which was incredibly disappointing. But it was also a really pivotal shift, because it switched my mindset from being like hanging my hopes on that next thing that medicine has to offer to being like, you know what? I don't need that guy. Like, I can do this myself. I've already got this great team of people with my physio and my psychologist. I can figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
And after that, I just saw leaps and bounds progress in my recovery, and the setbacks got fewer and far between, and they were not as severe. And every time I had to start again, I was starting from a much higher baseline. And so I was able to see enough progress that sort of plotted a path back to getting on the
So
path.
inspiring, so inspiring. So you just fell and got up and fell and got up, sometimes with a bloody nose, and you fell and got up and you fell and got up. This is it.
Yeah.
We fall 7 times and get up 8. This is it.
Well, it just felt at the time like I didn't have a choice. It was like I was never depressed at all. I mean, I was sad. I was incredibly sad about what I was going through. I was sad about missing out on things in life, but I was still really grateful for my life. Like, and I was so hyper aware of the fact that I'm in the prime of my life. I've got, you know, a wonderful partner who loves me. I've got this fantastic career. I've got wonderful friends and family. Like, I've got to figure this out. So that decision was always relatively easy, as much as it sucked dragging myself up off the floor and feeling like you're in pain all the time. But I was like, I don't have a choice. I have to keep trying. And like I said, if once I was able to look back at that pedometer and literally see those improvements over months, despite the setbacks, I was like, well, I'm on the right track here. I've just got to keep building on that momentum and leverage those analgesics.
So, well, listen, you'd make a great coach. I know you're a fireman, but you'd make a great cheerleader and a great coach. And wow. So to our listeners, first of all, this will be recorded by tomorrow on the YouTube channel, TMS Roundtable. And, you know, Max is available to answer any questions. You know, he's not a coach, but you can write the questions to me on the YouTube. And Max, I will send it to Max. Max is on Facebook. You can't miss his name, Max McQueen. It's a fabulous name. And I would love for you to feel connected, that you have a team here. You know, I'm available to speak to you. I offer complimentary consultations to, you know, everybody. And I have a great program of recovery. There's tons of amazing coaches. There's also amazing free resources that I send out, so people can do it on their own or with the right person or with the right health professional. The most important thing is you can do this. And, you know, the severity is not the issue. It's really the relationship and your level of hope and gratitude, which are all chemical. So just, you said so much and you shared so beautifully and so succinctly, you know, your path. And so now if something happens, tomorrow you wake up and you have a flare, what happens?
Well, I would say now, you know, I really changed my shift around trying to eliminate the pain to just reaching my goal despite whatever pain I had, because I was able to make all that progress with some level of pain. So it's interesting. Like, my relationship to the pain has really changed. It's the level of pain is almost irrelevant, because I know that I can reach my goals. But it's funny because, you know, around the time this all happened and you're learning about how to treat your nervous system and how to calm yourself down, when you get pain, you know, you have to talk very softly and gently and say, you know, everything's okay. There's no need for pain. We're really safe here and everything's fine. Whereas now it's just like, yeah, I hear you, but I'm still going to keep doing what I'm doing.
So that's actually another neural circuit. It's we call it provocative testing. And Dr. Schubiner shared this in a course. And it's like you provoke. You're like, okay, I can handle you. It's okay. Like, come on, it's all right. You can't hurt me. It's almost another way that we are like, okay, brain, I get it. I get your lizard brain. I get you're protecting me. This is your job. But I'm okay. I can handle this. If you need to somehow do your neurocircuit here, you know, and I'm okay. I can be with this. See, this is this is the, this is the key, where Howard Stern in the movie All the Rage was like, I laughed at the pain. This is the message. It's a very high level of even the quantum physics of like, I imagine myself with or without pain. Either way, I'm fine. Like, it's a level of tricking your brain in a way, because aren't we in agreement, Max, that the brain is a piece of flesh?
Yeah,
We
it's plastic.
train it.
And absolutely. And the paradoxical thing about that is that once you get to that point where you can almost ignore the pain or know that it's not going to stop you, well, your brain realizes you're forcing the brain to know that it's safe, essentially.
Yeah.
And so I don't get anywhere near as much pain as before.
So that's beautiful. Well, wow, you really have a career ahead of you as a fireman and a coach. And I'm sure as a fireman, you have to help people calm down. So we can go into that another time. So I so much appreciate you joining me in your evening, and this hour was amazing, and I'm excited to record this and talk a little bit. I'm going to mention, motion is lotion, which is Laura Mosley's, one of his sayings, and that you are so much paying it forward, and that it actually is very therapeutic to reach out and inspire people. And it was one of Dr. John Sarno's tips, was like, go help someone else, because what that does is sort of takes you out of that, and it becomes a neurological, it becomes a somatic, like safety, like I'm okay, I can help you, and all of a sudden you feel better. So you've proven that as well by showing up here today and meeting me for this hour, and maybe answering a few questions if anyone has any, in the on the Facebook page or on the YouTube channel. So we're going to round up and say goodbye. What would you want to leave our listeners with? Because you are a hero. You really are a hero. Really
Well,
are.
I think, like you're saying, paying it forward, I feel is very important to me. And if I zoom out and really look at everyone who went into helping me get to where I am today, like, it took a village of people to get me back on my feet, really, when you think about all those relationships, whether it's with practitioners or friends or colleagues or whoever. And so, if I can play a small part in being part of someone else's journey, because so many people helped me get to where I am, that would be, amazing. And also I wanted to let people know too that you don't have to follow some conventional path of recovery. Like if you suck at meditating like I did, it doesn't mean you're doomed. There's many ways that we can heal.
Yeah, amazing. And just in honor of, kind of like a higher level of when something negative happens, to kind of look and say, well, how can I learn from that? And that's what you did with that doctor who kind of slapped you in the face emotionally, and doctors, they do the best they can. And I never like to bash doctors on my broadcasts, but, we do the best we can. A lot of the medical system have no idea how to deal with chronic pain. And then we find these amazing doctors and physical therapists and people all around the country that are really available here to help you. And so you just have to find the right people. And like you said, create a village, create a team. And I'm just so inspired and so thrilled you reached out to me, and I will continue to find Max McQueen's on Facebook and bring more inspiring people. But I really, let's start a fan club of Max McQueen's. Like, you are really, and you also, you understand your pain. You explained it well. You really have come to terms with it, and this is called a relationship. And that's why you will never suffer again. You figured it out. Really figured it out. And I really am honored to meet you. And thank you for this hour. Thank your wife for sharing you. And Melbourne Fire Brigade,
Okay, yeah.
brigade is so happy to have you, so proud to have you. And really, really, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so much for
coming
your
on. And
time,
if I
Tovah,
can
and
ever help you in any way, I'm here. So we're going to round up and say goodbye, and till we meet again.
Thanks, Tovah. I appreciate
All the
it.
best.
All right,
Okay, 1 second.